I bought my parents a $425,000 seaside mansion for their 50th anniversary, but when I arrived, my sister's family was living there. Her husband pointed at my dad and shouted, "Get out. This is my house." My sister laughed, until I walked in, and everything went silent. Okay, let me tell you something that still makes my blood run cold. I bought my parents their dream home, only for my own family to try and steal it from right under their noses, turning their sanctuary into a battlefield. It was a betrayal so deep, so brazen, it changed everything I thought I knew about family. My name's Thomas. I'm 37, and if you'd met me a few months ago, I'd have described myself as the oldest kid, the one who fixes things. I'm a neurosurgeon, so my life usually involves a locker at the hospital and a suitcase at home. I track my days in 4 a.m. pages and meticulously plan schedules. I don't drink much, I run when I can, and I save almost every penny I make. Why? Because I grew up on overdraft fees and the constant refrain of, "We'll see next month." I was the kid who translated grown-up panic into reassurances like, "It'll be fine," even at 10 years old, while my mom cried over late rent. I learned the bitter taste of fear and the harsh shape of emergencies. Most importantly, I learned to be useful. 2 weeks before all hell broke loose, my parents hit their 50th wedding anniversary. I didn't want them to just have a party, I wanted them to have a win. A place where the air smelled like salt, where the floors didn't squeak, and nothing reminded them of coupons or secondhand furniture. I found this small, blue house, perched right above the water. A little crooked, sure, but warm. It had a white deck, 2 palm trees out front, and windows that practically sang when the wind rolled in from the bay. It was $425,000. I closed on it in their names, set up all the utilities, stocked the fridge with everything they loved, and even hid a little note in the silverware drawer for late mornings and loud laughter. I didn't tell anyone else, not even my sister, Julia. This was their moment. I told them a week before the anniversary, so they could have their happy tears in private. We drove down together, just the three of us. Dad touched the banister like it was a long-lost violin. Mom opened each cabinet, exhaling slowly, as if releasing decades of worry. We sat on the deck, listening to the gulls. "It's yours," I told them. Dad tried to speak, but his voice just broke. Mom just kept saying, "It smells like lemon and open windows." I stayed overnight on a blow-up mattress, just to test the plumbing. Everything worked. The next morning, I returned to the city to do a decompression on a little boy with a plum-sized tumor. The house stayed with them. Here's where the system did what systems do. Day 2, Julia called Mom. "Are you at a beach?" "Whose house?" My mom, a terrible liar, stammered. "Oh, we're just visiting a friend." By dinner, Julia had triangulated the address from a blurry sunset photo Dad innocently posted on Facebook. View from our porch. She arrived the next day with my brother-in-law, Kyle, their 2 kids, a dog, and the kind of entitlement you could smell from the driveway. Mom called me, her voice tiny. "They just wanted to see it," she said. "Then they're staying for the weekend. Is that okay?" "It isn't a rental," I told her, my jaw tight. "We'll talk when you come down," she promised. But by Saturday morning, Dad was texting me. Some confusion about the house. "Julia keeps saying, family home. Can you come?" Then, silence. Then, a call I couldn't pick up because I was scrubbed in. Then, the selfie. Julia, beaming in my parents' new kitchen, captioned, "Home sweet home." #manifesting. The comments rolled in so deserved. Beach era. One from Kyle. Finally, a place where the kids can be kids. My palm started to itch, right where a scalpel handle rests for hours. I sent Dad a text after surgery. "Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Love you." Then I drove straight. I rehearsed soothing words. Asterisk, we will reset this. We will breathe. We will set rules. Asterisk, but what I walked into was not a calm discussion. The front door was wide open, the screen banging in the wind. Inside, chaos. My mother was in the kitchen, clutching a dish towel like a white flag, her eyes red. My father sat hunched in a chair, hands trembling, boxes everywhere. Loud voices boomed from the hallway. A child's cartoon blared in the living room. A TV I hadn't even set up yet. Mom. I barely got out when he appeared. Kyle. Barefoot, beer in hand, wearing a football shirt. He planted himself in front of my father, jabbed a finger toward the door, and actually yelled, This is my house. Get out. From the couch, my sister Julia just laughed. Relax, Dad. We're just getting settled. The plastic cake lid I was still holding dug into my palm. Something in me went very, very quiet. I should explain the backstory before the room I loved turned into a battlefield. Julia, 2 years younger than me, was always the artist, then the free spirit, then the it's just a rough patch. My parents, God bless them, did what they knew, sacrificed, defended, minimized. And I did what I knew. I covered. First, it was textbooks, then a semester of tuition, then a down payment for her first apartment, just until Kyle's startup lands. When the startup landed, it was squarely on my wallet. I paid for braces for her oldest when their dental plan had a weird deductible. I financed a used minivan when the bank said no. I co-signed a lease after their eviction. My Venmo notes read like a diary of their chaos. Asterisk Julia electric bill. Kyle job interview suit. School trip for Mia. Rent again just this one last time. Asterisk every transfer felt like control, like I could sand down our family's big, ugly edges. I was wrong. My parents helped too, in smaller, more bleeding ways. Mom packed groceries into Julia's trunk and called it cleaning out the pantry. Dad let Kyle use his tools and get practice on repairs that always cost more to fix. The chorus never changed. You know your sister. Not everyone's like you, Thomas. You were born old. In residency, I slept on call room mattresses and sent money over broken Wi-Fi at 2 a.m. because a landlord was threatening to change the locks in the morning. Somewhere along the line, I became a card they swiped without thinking about the balance. When I found the Seaside place, I planned it like a surgery. I put the deed in a trust with my parents as lifetime beneficiaries. I paid the taxes out 20 years on a dedicated account. I prepaid the HOA fees. I replaced the locks, and then looked at the keys in my hand and felt like I was holding a life raft. Back in that living room, with the cake lid still indenting my palm, Kyle's voice ripped through my thoughts again. You two are old, he blustered, waving a hand vaguely at my parents. Stairs are dangerous. You'll fall. This is a family house. We're family. We'll manage it. Mom tried to interject. It's Thomas's gift, and Kyle cut her off. He gave it to you. You're giving it to us. Same difference. Julia, from the couch, didn't even stand up. She just smirked. Don't be dramatic, Mom. We'll handle the bookings. Bookings? I heard myself ask. Kyle waved toward the sparkling view outside. Prime waterfront. Peak season. I listed it this morning. Easy money. You two can have the downstairs during off-season. I looked at my father's hands. They were trembling, like they do when he's absolutely furious and trying desperately not to be. This was the same man who once worked 3 jobs and still found a way to show up at my high school orchestra concert in a greasy uniform. He was now being told to move aside in a house he had just learned was his. I was raised on be useful, not be loud. But the last text from Dad had been a request I couldn't file under later. I set the cake on the crowded counter. It looked ridiculous, surrounded by fast food bags and makeup kits. My voice, when it came out, was steady. Who told you this is your house? Kyle rolled his eyes like I was slow. Family money, family house. Don't be weird. Julia added, sing-song, we're not asking, Tommy. We're updating. Mom's face crumpled. Thomas, can you just explain? Kyle pointed at my father again. He can explain from the porch. Julia actually laughed. Babe, stop. Dad knows we love him. My father's jaw worked. No sound. Something in me clicked into place, like a bayonet locking into a rifle. Everyone to the living room, I said. Not loud, just surgical loud. The kids paused their show. The dog stopped shredding a throw pillow. Kyle snorted, but he followed, because people like him always believe the room belongs to them. I stood by the mantel, under a framed photo of my parents cutting a supermarket cake 40 years ago. I could feel my pulse in my thumbs. I pulled a folder from my bag and laid out 5 documents on the coffee table. Deed, I said, tapping the first page. Recorded last week. The property is owned by the AS&R Life Trust. Lifetime beneficiaries, Sam and Ruth, my parents, with exclusive right of occupancy. Kyle squinted, like the words were doing something to him in English. In English, I said, you don't get a key, Kyle. He scoffed. Bro, try and stop me. I tapped the second page. Trust instrument. Successor trustee, Thomas Miller. It gives me the duty to maintain the property for my parents' comfort. It also gives me the obligation to remove anyone who interferes with that. Julia's tone went saccharine. Thomas, you can't be serious. We're helping. I slid the third document forward, a color screenshot. The Airbnb listing you just posted. Using photos you took without permission. The description, entire home. The house rules, no owner on site. The availability calendar, booked out every weekend through August. The payout, bank account ends in digits that match yours, Kyle. I blurred them for the kids. Kyle shifted uneasily. So what? Your parents could use the cash, man. I put down the fourth, a printed group chat thread from last night that Julia didn't know Dad had forwarded to me. Her messages were in gray. Asterisk, we'll get him on board. He always caves if Mom cries. I'll guilt him about med school loans. So excited to finally have a beach base. Asterisk, Julia reached for it. I covered it with my hand. I placed the fifth, a laminated copy of the HOA rules. I ran my finger down to the clause. No short-term rentals. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to pack your things today. You're going to delete the listing. You're going to text every person who booked and tell them the home is unavailable and issue refunds. You're going to apologize to Mom and Dad for frightening them in their own kitchen. And you're going to leave this house key on the table. Julia blinked, as if she'd misheard. Then she laughed, a high, trilling sound. Or what, Tommy? Or, I said, I will perform my duty as trustee. Kyle took a step toward me. Duty this, he said, actually puffing his chest out like we were 12. Mom whispered, Kyle, please. I don't like yelling. I like precision. So, I kept it surgical. I set my phone on the table, screen up. On it, a drafted email to the HOA board with attachments. A second email to their council. A third to the county recorder with the Airbnb link and a request to flag the parcel for illegal use. A text thread was open with a locksmith named Victor who was parked 2 houses down because I called him from the highway when Dad sent that first. Some confusion. Kyle saw it. His bluster deflated slightly. You wouldn't. I would, I said. And I already did. Julia reached for Mom. Mom, tell him. Tell him this is family. Mom didn't look at her. She looked at me. Thomas, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Do what you need to do. Kyle's face changed. He pointed to the door again. That same stupid gesture that had lit the fuse. Old man out. I stepped between Kyle and my father. My hands were steady, because I've held brains that pulsed like birds. Point at my father again, I said quietly. And the only door you're going through is the one Victor is about to lock from the outside. Silence. Not even the cartoons. Julia tried a last, desperate angle. You're cruel, she hissed. You're abandoning your family. I exhaled. I am done being your wallet. That's not abandonment. That's a boundary. Kyle muttered something. He lunged for the folder, maybe to grab the deed, maybe to rip up paper like that could kill a trust. I simply picked up the papers, tucked them away, and turned to Dad. Dad, I said, would you like to stay in your living room? He swallowed. Yes. Then everyone who doesn't live here, go pack. No one moved. The doorbell rang. Victor. Right on time. It took 3 hours, because chaos always takes longer to unwind than to start. Victor changed the deadbolt while Kyle performed a quiet little tantrum in the driveway. Whisper yelling at Julia, kicking at the curb, calling someone to check a legal thing. The dog barked itself hoarse. The kids moved like embarrassed shadows, stuffing clothes into tote bags while half watching me, as if I might explode. I didn't. I sat with Mom at the kitchen table and made tea in the kettle I'd bought. She kept dabbing her eyes with a napkin. I didn't want to tell you, she said. I thought we could smooth it. They came in so fast. They said it would be easier for us this way. No stairs for your father, less to clean. They said they'd take over the hard parts. The hard parts are the parts that mean ours, I told her. She nodded, a small, guilty nod I knew from every time she'd apologized for the weather. Dad stared out at the water. I thought I'd be stronger, he said. I should have told them to leave. You called me, I said. That was the strong part. In the living room, I opened my laptop, connected to my hotspot, and forwarded canceled to every illegal booking. I wrote each customer. Listing removed by owner. Refund issued. I even attached the HOA rule for the one who threatened a review. I drafted a short letter to neighbors. You may have seen cars. There was confusion. There will be no short-term rentals at 24 Seaside. Julia tried to reframe it at least 3 times. First pass, sitting on a packed suitcase, face arranged into soft hurt. We were just excited for them. I wanted the kids to be around their grandparents more. You know how you work. Second pass. It makes sense if you think about it. You're never there. They're getting old. We're the ones with energy. Third pass. When I didn't argue, didn't bite, she went for blood. You think money makes you the parent, Thomas? It doesn't. You buy things so you don't have to be a person. I bought a house for our parents, I said. I didn't buy a permission slip for you to steal. She flinched at the word, then went cold. Well, remember this, she said. I hope so, I replied. Kyle refused to hand over the key. Come and take it, he smirked, which would have been cute if Victor hadn't installed the keypad lock 10 minutes earlier. I reached past Kyle, pressed 0-0-0-0, then reprogrammed it to a code Dad chose, while Kyle watched all his leverage sink into the sea air. He tried another angle. You think you're clever with your papers? He said. I know a guy, I said evenly. I know the county clerk, and your guy is about to tell you a trust beats a tantrum. He stared at me like he was trying to decide if I was bluffing. I wasn't. When they finally carried their boxes to the SUV, Julia paused on the porch. You could have just talked to me, she said. I have been talking to you for 10 years, I replied. Her mouth tightened. You'll regret this when they need help and you're not around. I looked at Mom, pouring tea. I looked at Dad's hand, finally still, on the armrest. I am around, I said. For them. They drove away. The dog yapped at the window like it had an opinion about property law. After they left, the house changed temperature. It was the same air, but not the same air. I could hear the ocean through the screen. I could hear my parents breathing. I went room to room with a trash bag, picking up juice boxes and a plastic tiara and 2 socks that didn't match. I found a folded printout in the guest room drawer, Kyle's business plan. He'd estimated monthly profit at 5 times the HOA fine. In the margin, Julia had written, Tom won't say no if Mom cries. I put the paper down like it was something sharp. Mom kept apologizing for the mess. I kept saying, it's just crumbs. When the sun slid down, Dad took my arm. Son, he said, I don't know how to say this without sounding like I failed you both. You didn't fail us, I said. You gave us everything you had. Just, you gave too much to her for too long. We all did. He nodded and didn't argue, because it was true, and the truth was a relief. I made a simple dinner. We ate on the deck. Mom told a story about her first apartment, the one with the mouse she named Bernard, because he only came out on Sundays. Dad laughed, the laugh I only hear when he's not being careful for everyone else. My phone buzzed like a nest of hornets. Text from Julia. You made Mom cry. From Kyle. Cease and desist, Dr. Boy. From an unknown number that turned out to be Kyle's cousin. We're coming down next weekend, right? We already invited people. I put the phone face down and ate my salad. That night, I set the alarm system. I installed a camera on the porch with a ridiculous, smiling chime, so even my parents would like it. I put the codes in a folder labeled Happy Things in big letters Dad could read without his glasses. I left copies of the trust, the deed, and the HOA rules in a drawer called Boring Armor. On my way out, Mom stood in the doorway, her sweater pulled tight. I'm sorry it came to this, she said. I'm not, I replied. It needed to. The next week, everything wobbled like a table with one leg too short. Julia ran a loud campaign in the family chat. Thomas stole a house from the grandchildren. Screenshots poured in from cousins I barely speak to. Julia's Instagram stories, a blank background, white text, when money makes you cruel. Then a photo of my car in the driveway. Some people think they can buy love. I didn't reply. I built a small wall. I called our aunt, who still says what she means. I explained in simple lines that the house belongs to my parents and will remain that way as long as they live. I asked her not to carry our pain like gossip. She said, finally, Thomas, and that was that. I wrote Julia and Kyle one email, polite, firm, boring. It included 3 bullet points. All contact regarding the house goes through me. You do not have permission to enter the property. Any violation will result in action from the HOA and our attorney. I BCC'd myself. I set the email as an auto-response to any of their future messages about the house. I promised myself I would not negotiate with a story that always ends the same way. 2 days later, a notification pinged. New booking request, Sea Spray Cottage. Kyle had relisted under a different account, with a photo of the back deck. I forwarded it to the platform's trust and safety, with the deed and trust attached. 10 minutes later, listing removed. User banned. I didn't feel triumph. I felt like a janitor at a stadium after a game, just doing the work. Dad called me one morning to say the house smelled like toast and salt, and that he'd slept through the night for the first time in months. Mom sent a photo of her feet on the deck rail, ankles crossed, nail polish bright pink, just like when I was 5 and thought she was movie star beautiful. They looked light. In the background of all that softness, Julia kept scratching at the wall. She sent me a payment request in an app for emotional damages. She mailed my parents a letter that began, "As your primary caregiver," which was a sentence that had never, ever been true. Kyle posted a meme with a syringe and a $sign, like I stole organs for money. Their noise didn't change the air in the little blue house. One night, Julia called from a block number. I answered, because I'm either soft or hopeful. She went quiet when she heard my voice. Then she tried a new tactic, a whisper. "Tommy, listen. We're behind. Kyle lost his contract. We're going to lose the apartment. The kids." I closed my eyes. There is a point where empathy becomes gasoline. "Julia," I said, "I will not discuss the house." "So money matters more to you than family," she snapped, mask back on. "Boundaries," I said, "are how I can be family and not a bank." She hung up. I let the silence sit like a patient in recovery, monitored, protected, painful in a healing way. 2 weekends later, I drove down early. Coffee in a thermos, stethoscope still around my neck from habit. The water had that flat silver look, like it was resting between breaths. I fixed a sticky door hinge. I put tennis balls on the garage shelf at the right depth so Dad could pull the car in without bumping the wall. I labeled the breakers because Dad loves labels. Mom made pancakes, burned the first batch, laughed. We sat at the table and spoke about groceries, about the neighbor named Jan who leaves shells in a jar on the fence, about the pelican who refuses to be dignified. No one said Julia for an hour. It felt like a clean countertop. After breakfast, Mom touched my hand. "I'm going to talk to your sister," she said. "Not to argue. To say no. I'm not asking you to choose," I said, and I meant it. I'm not interested in that scorched earth thing where people declare winners. I just wanted my parents to have a porch in peace. Mom smiled small. "It's not choosing," she said. "It's stopping the pretending." Dad cleared his throat. "I should have taught that better," he said. "I taught you to work. I didn't teach you to stop. You taught me to love and to stay," I said. "I'm just learning the without being eaten part." He laughed, low, grateful. I walked the perimeter and tightened the gate latch. I checked the camera angle. I printed a little sign for the entry table. "Welcome home, Sam and Ruth." It felt corny and exactly right. Later, alone on the deck, I thought about the headline my sister would write if she owned my story. "I gifted my parents a house and ruined my family." That's not what happened. What happened is I stopped paying the troll under the bridge. What happened is I made a gift and then guarded it so it didn't become a weapon. I used to tell myself that handing out money kept the peace. It didn't. It kept the noise quiet while resentment fermented in the walls. Boundaries are louder at first. Then there's a hush no one can fake. The messages slowed. Julia pivoted to other audiences. Kyle found a new hill to throw a tantrum on. My parents started saying small no's that sounded like yes to their own lives. Asterisk no, we can't watch the kids this weekend. No, we can't drive across town to fix your car. Asterisk they started saying yes to early sandwiches, to naps, to pointing out boats with funny names. A month in, my niece, 16, all band tees and big eyes, sent me a DM that just said, "The house is pretty. Grandma looks happy there." I typed back, "Come visit with Grandma's permission." No bookings, just pancakes. She sent a laughing emoji and then, "Okay." A tiny truce with someone who didn't break anything. Last night, after a late case, I drove to the house because I needed to see it lit from the inside. Through the window, I could see my father reading in his chair. Glasses slid down his nose, the same way he sat in our old apartment when the only light we had was the TV glow. Mom had a blanket over her lap and a puzzle on the table. The sound of the ocean climbed in and settled under everything like bass. I didn't go in. I stood on the sidewalk and let the quiet explain the point of all of this to me. Here's what I know now. Love is not covering someone's bad behavior with your body. It isn't congratulating chaos because the person causing it shares your blood. Love is a house with good light and doors that lock. Love is paperwork that holds when people don't. Love is telling your parents, rest, and telling everyone else, no, I am not their bank. I am not their scapegoat. I am not the emergency exit they pull when the fire they set gets hot. I am their son, a man with a job that asks me to be precise. A brother who finally learned that precision belongs at home, too. If my sister ever wants to stand on this deck and look at this water with our parents, she can. She can come with empty hands and an apology, not a business plan. She can be family without touching the thermostat. Until then, the house stands. The locks click. The gulls argue. The windows sing when the wind pushes in from the bay. Inside, my parents breathe easy. That's the moral, if there is one. A gift should not cost you yourself. And a boundary is not cruelty. It's the way love keeps its porch light on without burning down the neighborhood.